Hey crafters! In this video I'm showing you how you can get text into your projects in Design Space and all the different features and functionalities it has to offer for designing with your text. This is the second in a two-part series on using text in your projects. If you want to see the first video, which is all about how to design with text from a graphic design perspective and specifically for us crafters, then I'll link that video in the description below. Let's head over to Design Space. The first decision you need to make when adding text to any project is, do you intend to cut the text or to write the text? On the screen you can see an example of a font appropriate for cutting. So this would be the kind of font you would use if you were going to cut a vinyl decal or cut these letters out of cardstock. You can see that the font is actually tracing around the outside of the letters. This gives it that breadth that you need in order to cut. Alternatively, you may be wanting to use a pen or the foil tool to get a handwritten look. The difference is that a writing font has only one stroke for the letter. So you can see it's not tracing around the letter, but it's simply writing the letter with one stroke. Let me now demonstrate how you can find fonts appropriate for both cutting and writing. What you'll do is select the text option, and then you'll see this text box appears where you would type. And you can select a font from this toolbar which appears whenever you select the text option. You can see the first option here is the font. When you click on this menu will open, which will list all of the available fonts. Let me show you how this menu works. You can set the filter to all. This will show you all available fonts, so those which are the default fonts from your computer, fonts which are available through Cricut, and any fonts that you have downloaded and installed onto your computer. System fonts will show you only those which are on your computer, your default ones, and those you've downloaded. Cricut will filter for only those fonts provided by Cricut. This will include Cricut Access fonts and fonts which you would have to pay for additionally even if you are a Cricut Access member. So let's look at this filter menu. The first filter I would always select is My Fonts. This will filter only those fonts which are available to you. This means all of your system fonts, and from Cricut it will filter out depending whether you are a Cricut Access member or not. If you are, those will be included. If not, then those will be filtered out. And there are also certain fonts that Cricut would charge for whether you are an Access member or not. So those will be filtered out, and I prefer to filter those out so that I don't accidentally work with a font that I'd have to pay for. Now when we're looking for a cutting font, you could select multi-layer or single layer. I'll explain multi-layer later in this video. You can check the timestamp if you want to skip ahead. For now, just filter for single layer. And these are all the fonts that will work as a cutting font. So you can select any one. You can see this is a cutting font. It is tracing around the outside of the letters. If we go back and now change this filter, so to deselect you click again, and now let's filter for a writing font. The list of fonts that now appears all have writing style as an option. Some of them you can see are cutting and writing, some of them are just writing. If we select this first one, so now you can see it's changed it to that font, but it's still in a cutting format, and that's because this font is available as cutting and writing. So to get the writing style, you have to come to Style, change to Writing. And so now you see it's changed to single strokes. If you were to select a font which is only available as writing, then it would automatically be set to the writing style because there's no alternative here. One thing to point out is if you look at this example here, this font, I selected a writing style font, and you can see that the letter spacing is a bit off. This is something that happens very often when working with text in Cricut Design Space. The letters do not have an even spacing, and I find this to be a particular problem with calligraphy or script style fonts. I'll show you how to fix this later in the video, but use the timestamps and skip ahead if you want to know now. Let's move on to the next topic, which is font size. So we have two options on how you can resize. You can simply click and drag. So I want to try and get this to approximately 100. You can see the font size changing here as I drag. This option you would use if you're happy to just estimate by eye how big you want the font in your project. If, however, you want a precise number, you just select on the font size and type in exactly how big you want your font to be. Just to note, when you are resizing using click and drag, always keep the lock icon on. Do not unlock, because when you then click and drag, you're going to mess around with the aspect ratio of your font. And this is not something that is recommended from a design perspective. Your font will end up looking unprofessional. The next topic we will cover is letter spacing, and this is also known as tracking. So I've got two examples for you here. This is a sans serif font, and when you type, this is the letter spacing that Design Space defaults to. An easy way to correct this is to click on this letter space option and just increase until you're happy with how it's looking. Using this letter space tool works quite well for sans serif fonts, where you don't need the letters to be joined to each other. However, if we use this script font, this is how it looks when you first type. You can see that it really doesn't matter how much I correct this letter spacing by. We're not going to be able to fix it like this, because now the words are starting to merge. Some letters still have large gaps between them, others have small gaps, others are overlapping. To correct these, we will have to ungroup to letters. I will explain this concept. Check the timestamps if you want to find out now. You may also want to play with your letter spacing to create a design effect. Using this quote as an example, the entire quote consists of only one font, but to give the word obstacles more emphasis, I have changed it to capitals and increased the tracking relative to the rest of the font. So the letter space tool is useful for correcting how something looks, but also to play around with as a design element. Let's move on to line spacing and alignment. You can see these are the next two options in the text toolbar. One thing to note is that the text boxes in Design Space are dynamic. So if I show you what I've got in this text box, there's lots of text, but it's showing on the screen as one long line, because for as long as you keep typing, Design Space will just increase the size of your text box. To get this looking more like a block of text with paragraphs, you have to physically go into this text box here and hit enter. And now you can see that the next line has appeared down below. You'll need to play around a bit to get this looking correct. So you can see I'm having to move the first word of each line back to have it all aligned correctly. And so you can just continue doing this until you're happy with how the text is looking. Once you are happy with how your text is looking, I want to show how you can correct the alignment. So select from the drop-down menu left, which is where it's already set, switch to center or right. Let's now look at how you can curve text. So here is an example of a block of text. And I want to show you how this curve option, it's not available. The reason is you can only curve on one line of text at a time. So you would have to select your text, ungroup to lines, and now you can see each of these lines is its own individual text. And now the curve option is available. So to demonstrate how this works, let's use this text. Let's first ungroup to lines. And now if you want to curve this word, you simply drag the slider and you can see that it's automatically being curved for you. You simply move it left or right depending on how you want the curve to be. And this number here represents the diameter of the circle around which Design Space is curving your word. If I set this to 20, it has curved the word around a circle which has a diameter of 20. And that's what I'm showing you here. So this is the same word curved up to a setting of 20, and this circle underneath has a diameter of 20. So that's the measurement from one end to the other through the center is 20 centimeters. And you can see how it is curved around the circumference of that circle. In order to get this other word to match the curve, you would simply select it. You know that the curve you want is 20, but you want it in the other direction to the first word. So you would instead type -20. And you can see that curve has been applied to this word. The final feature in Design Space is the advanced section. So I mentioned earlier we would talk about ungrouping to letters. So select Ungroup to Letters from the advanced toolbar. And now you can see each letter here is its own individual text box. And this is how you would correct the alignment for a script style font. So I will simply select this letter O, and I prefer to now move my letters using the arrow keys as opposed to the mouse, because I don't want to lose the horizontal alignment that the letters have already got. So I simply press the arrow key until I'm happy with where the letter is aligned. And you would just continue doing this for all the letters. So that's how to use Ungroup to Letters. Ungroup to Lines we discussed earlier. And the final option is Ungroup to Layers. You would use this when you have multi-layer cutting fonts. So if you remember, when we looked up in this filter option, there was this multi-layer. These are all multi-layer fonts, and what that means is either you've got a font made of multiple different colors, and when you ungroup to layers, the layers you will get will be each individual color. So although this font looks like one layer, there isn't something behind these letters. Design Space views the different colors as their own layers. And the other instance in which you would ungroup to layers is where you do have multiple layers. So this I've already ungrouped. You can see here there's a top layer and a few other layers underneath, which when they combined, they give you this final look. So those are the key features and functionalities for working with text in Design Space. I hope you found this useful. If there's any other questions you have, topics I've not covered, let me know in the comments or DM me on Instagram at LondonCraftGirl. If you've not seen part 1 of this mini-series, definitely check it out. I will link it below. As ever, thank you for watching, and until next time, happy crafting!